I went ahead and started the stream, but I'll start the recording.
Oh,
I should have been later.
To help John nip out,
Mm-hmm.
I hit the on button, turn that on. Should be on the top of it, I guess. Or go down one. There you go. Just punch it. Try it again. There you go. Now swipe up from the middle. There you go. And hit refresh on that browser. There you go.
Okay.
That way it's up to the current and everything there.
You haven't been able to be here the last few times, but
Oh, okay.
with Sharon, but that's all right.
When you start, if he's not here, hit merge and bring that one over to here. That way people at home can see the verses.
Okay, so if I hit merge,
Yeah,
that's what they see at home.
exactly. Yeah.
Unmerge. And hit merge again and change it. Okay.
Yeah, you don't necessarily,
I won't worry about that if I'm teaching. I'll just leave it on merge. But
I'm curious. Let me try something. Okay, I don't have any shortcuts programmed for this one. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, but when
if
you
he's not
start-
here, I'll hit that.
Yeah, that'll work.
Good morning. Hi, how are you?
I am fine. Fine.
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm ready. You're here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
I know someone. It's good to see you, and they said, "Well, it's good to be seen."
Yeah. Yes. There's something wrong if you can't see me. Well, it is cold out there.
Oh, that wind is, oh, really biting.
Yes, it bites. Oh.
Okay, that's a New King James Version. I have the New American Standard,
Uh-huh.
and instead, they said basket, mine says EPAH. I can't
Oh.
pronounce it. EPHAH.
Yeah.
This is the going forth. They call it a basket.
Yes.
Okay. Let me see what how the definition is.
There.
An ancient Hebrew dry measure equal to a bushel.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is my bushel basket, so okay, that's probably how
Yeah.
they come.
Why don't they say that?
And it's easier to pronounce basket than it is epah.
Yeah. Yes. Much easier.
And you can look at what an epah is, because next one, there's a lady sitting inside the epah. Basket makes a little bit more sense. Must be a
Yes.
big basket or a very small woman.
Yeah.
Boy, the bread that Janice made for your spaghetti there was good. That's good. I got, she gave me a little bit.
Morning, good morning, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, good morning.
Huh?
Minnie's kids. Minnie's girls.
Oh, Mindy's.
Yeah, they're here.
Fortunately, in this class, that's Chef, he reads it, so when we've got, other places, we take turns reading, he just reads it, so.
He just reads
Yeah.
it. Okay. Different people do different
Yeah.
stuff.
Mhm.
Good morning. Hello again. Hi. Hi.
You have to look every time.
are you going home? Today?
Tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Oh, well, you've had a really nice well, we've had a really nice visit.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We always go into it hopeful, but we didn't think that we were going to win the championship. Yeah.
Once in a great while, but we still don't know.
Yeah, it's been 5 years since you were able to beat us.
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we didn't really expect to make it any farther. We had a lot of good pieces, but we didn't have.
Yeah,
We were fortunate, I think, to make it to the semifinals. So.
yeah.
Look at you, curly.
I know, it's so pretty.
It was really easy too. I these some loaning these to somebody said she wants to try them. These, I had 3 this size and 4 the little smaller.
Yeah.
ones.
And you just
And
fill them
then,
around and
and
then
here.
and let it dry
Well,
in place.
Ron sits here so he can hear,
Oh.
and then another
And you
man
will do
sits
that?
there.
Yeah, so like twice as fun.
That's cool.
I saw Isaac.
Yeah, so his mom.
Well, actually, I don't know if I saw Isaac. I saw his mom and his brother.
Isaac's here.
He is? Okay.
Yep.
I just didn't see him. I saw his
So I
brother.
with that picture.
Yeah, they're all
What's up, John?
Good
Oh,
looking.
it looks great.
Nine.
There he is. What's going on? Want me to close the door? Sure, if you want to.
Yes,
She says yes.
Keep the warm air in
Out
there.
there, it's hard for me to hear.
There you go.
I said yes, please.
Yeah, you did. You did. Well, I don't mind, so if y'all mind, then yeah, sure. All right. You go ahead and get started. John can't be here, and I think Chuck isn't going to be here either.
Yeah, they won't be here this morning.
From what I understand. So we've got who we're going to have, I think, this morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. We are in Zechariah 5. In verse 5, we're going to go over the vision of the woman in the basket. We might have mentioned it a little bit last week, but we're going to go over it again because even if we did, we didn't get to go over it very well. And then we went over the vision of the flying scroll where it had the curse on one side for the thieves and then the curse on the other for the ones who are going to be speaking, I believe it is, swears falsely, yeah. So we talked about that one. And we're going to get in now to the vision of the woman in the basket. But before we do, Isaac, would you say a prayer for us, please?
Could you hang on just a second?
Oh, yeah.
Our Father in heaven, we want to thank you for this day, and all your wonderful many blessings, your mercy, your grace, and I sacrifice your Son in forgiveness of our sins. Be with us in this class. May we listen to what's being taught, apply it in our lives, keep an open heart, an open mind. Be with the sick and afflicted, guide us and keep us always. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks, Isaac. All right, gotta get it ready for the people watching at home if they are. Okay. So, Zechariah chapter 5, verse 5, we just got through, of course, with the vision, like we talked about, of the flying scroll. We are still in the visions that Zechariah is receiving, the 8 visions in one night that he's receiving, and this is going to be the 7th vision. So we've only got 2 more visions to talk about, and then we are going to get into the commandment there in verse 9, where the vision's in to crown Joshua. So that's where we're headed in our study this morning. Let's go ahead and read this vision, and then we'll discuss it in more depth. It says in verse 5, Then the angel who talked with me came out and said to me, Lift your eyes now and see what see what this is that goes forth. So I asked, what is it? And he said, it's a basket that's going forth. He also said, this is their resemblance throughout the earth. Here's a lead disc lifted up, and this is a woman sitting inside the basket. Then he said, this is wickedness. And he thrust her down into the basket and threw the lead cover over its mouth. Then I raised my eyes and looked, and there were two women coming with the wind in their wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the basket between the earth and heaven. So I said to the angel who talked with me, where are they carrying the basket? And he said, to build a house for it in the land of Shinar. When it is ready, the basket will be set there on its base. Okay, so that's his vision that he receives. Of course, when he opens his eyes and looks, when he lifts his eyes, what does he see? He sees a basket, right? And this basket is going to have to be of somewhat large size, right? Because there's a woman in it. Okay, that's revealed to him that there's a woman that's laying. Some of the older translations will say it's crouched, like she's crouched down in the basket or something. So it's a pretty big basket, just to get your imagery in your head there going. It's not like a little basket you'd carry fruit in or something. Big basket. It would hold a woman, and now it has a lead top on it, right? So what it says. So it says it has a lead disc that covers the basket, right? The weight that would be there to keep whatever was in the basket from going out. You've seen some of the movies where they talk about kind of the Middle Eastern type, where they're over there. I think one of the Indiana Jones movies uses one of these baskets a lot, or a bunch of them. Everybody's carrying them on their heads, and it's like all on the streets, and you can't find what he's looking for. It's one of those baskets. Almost looks like a barrel with a round lid on top of it. That's the best way I can kind of describe it. So it's got this lead top on it, and it's lifted up enough for him to see that there's a woman sitting inside the basket. Okay, and so he, obviously, like all the other visions, doesn't understand what this is, but he says this is wickedness, and he thrusts her down into the basket, threw the lead cover over its mouth. So what does the woman represent in this vision? Wickedness, okay? The woman in this vision is wickedness. That's what she represents. Not just the wickedness of herself, but the wickedness of who? The people, right? Yeah, that's exactly right. So she represents the wickedness of the people. She's thrust down into the basket. The lead cover is thrown over the mouth of the basket. And it says he raised his eyes and looked, and there were two women coming with wind in their wings. Okay, so these women have wings, right? That he's seeing in the vision, the wings like a stork, right? What's kind of the significance there of it being wings like a stork instead of just wings?
Well, can they be stronger?
Yeah, exactly. They're strong, mighty type wings. You think, they don't have wings like a butterfly, right? Real frail, fragile wings. They have big, strong, long, big, huge wings. And yeah, that's exactly right. They're stronger. So it says that they lifted up the basket, these two women, between earth and heaven. And he said, where are they carrying the basket? Okay, so they're taking the basket and they're carrying it somewhere. And so he asked, where are they carrying it? And he says they're going to build a house for it in the land of Shinar. When it's ready, the basket will be set there on its base. So we know that the basket, right, representing, earlier I forgot to mention, the resemblance throughout the earth. And then the wickedness is inside the basket. So the basket's carrying wickedness, right? And they're taking that wickedness where?
Shinar. Where's that?
To the land of Shinar. Well, I wouldn't in this vision think about it too much geographically, okay, as symbolically. That's talked about there in verse 9, or verse 11. Let me get to where I had my note on it in here. The land of Shinar, I'm thinking, if I'm right, in Genesis chapter 10, that's where I put my note. Genesis chapter 10, and in verse 10 and 11. And at the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria to build Nineveh, Rehoboth, and Rehoboth and Kala. So what we have here is Nimrod, when he's beginning to be a mighty person on the earth. He's establishing these first kingdoms of the earth, right? And Shinar was one of those kingdoms. If you read further about Shinar, it was always in opposition to God. Okay, it was not a place that was righteous. It was not a place that was worshiping God or with God. It was always in opposition to God. So it's meant to be more of a wicked place. Okay, if we're looking geographically at the nation of Shinar, okay, or the kingdom of Shinar there, but. We know that it's not necessarily in this vision to be thought of literally as being carried to Shinar geographically, but more that it signifies sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Not to be thought of, as a geographical country, but more of like Satan's world government or something, if you would. Like it's a wicked place, carrying the wickedness to the wicked place is what this is meaning. Does that make sense? Okay.
Does it say to build a house for it there? The basket?
Yeah. Yes, the wickedness that they will build a house. If you are building a house for something somewhere, you're establishing it there, right? Like if you were to move to a town and you built a house for yourself there, you're going to live there, stay there. You're establishing yourself there in that place. That's what's happening here. Okay. So the wickedness is being carried off basically into a wicked place, Satan's place. Okay. Like when the place would be prepared, wickedness is set there in the prepared place for wickedness. Does that make sense? Okay. Kind of confusing explanation on my part, sorry.
That's all you could say.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, then that's good. As long as it makes sense.
I think that's taken wrong.
Mm-hmm. Right. So they're preparing a place in the land of Shinar, or a wicked place, and then when it's ready, when that place is prepared and ready, the basket will be set there on its base. We can kind of see a foreshadowing, can't we, to the wickedness going to the place that they're predestined to go to, right? To hell, to punishment.
Well, I think definitely on track, not necessarily literal place, but that Genesis 10:10 reference, one of the cities, areas in Shinar is Babel, and Babel became Babylon, and we know that they'd been in Babylon captivity, carried away into there because of their own wickedness, and Babylon still stands for wicked. Even the book of Revelation stands for wickedness in general, Satan's kingdom of wickedness on things. So not necessarily the place Babylon, but standing for a place of wickedness. And the wickedness of God's people that was there has been carried away to it in this vision.
Yeah.
That means they'd
That's a
be
good
able
point.
to relate to Shinar.
Yes, they would have known. Yeah, they would have. I'm sure they would have been able to make that connection, or at least Zechariah would have in that vision made the connection of Shinar and Babylon there, Shinar, however you say it. But yeah, so what basically, if anybody can give me a brief summary, it's a pretty straightforward vision, but what's basically the vision here? What's the point of the vision that Zechariah is supposed to get from this?
Who is the woman in the basket? Do we know who the woman
We don't know who the woman is. We just know she represents wickedness. The woman in the vision is the symbol for just all wickedness.
I thought she represents me. Okay.
Yes. I think basically the point of it is said there in verse 11, or in verse 9 and 11, where they carry the basket up between heaven and earth. They take her to the land of Shinar, which would be the wickedness is going to its prepared wicked place. That's what I think the point of the vision is told to Zechariah. So, as we mentioned before, we had a lot of very encouraging visions, right? Coming up until the last like 3 visions were more visions of warning and visions of kind of they've got a consequence in them instead of just you're going to be victorious, you're going to be conquerors. There's a little bit of a warning there, and I think that this is the same way. That wickedness, if the people are wicked, much like the people of Babylon were wicked, there's going to be a prepared place that those wicked people are going to be carried off to. So, and of course, like I mentioned, this is extremely relatable to us today, even under the New Covenant, knowing that our wicked actions have a wicked result. We'll talk more about that in our sermon tonight. The sermon I'm preaching is reaping what you sow. So that that's a big thing. That if we sow to wickedness, we then reap the same wickedness, right? So that's kind of what this vision is talking about here.
It seems that wickedness is shut up into that basket, so that lead cover, that would be pretty heavy.
Right.
So it can't get out until it's established in its place. Could that be?
That's a very good thought.
Is there something that could be?
That's a very good thought.
Contained.
I didn't necessarily.
Contained, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily go there
So it doesn't
in my
spread
mind,
anywhere,
but that's a good thought, for sure.
so it resembles the opposite.
Let's see. Let's see what verse is that in. I've got a little commentary here that might help us out if I can find the verse. It talks about the lead. 7. Let's see what he says. Take it for what it's worth. It's just a commentary, but let's see. He doesn't really talk about it in here.
It seems to me that it's very encouraging. Actually, this is encouraging because, like, I like the idea of evil being shut up inside, and then it's carried away. So and who is it carried away from? The people of Israel, the promised people, right?
Yes, but at the same time, I think this is a warning to the fact that if the people of Israel are wicked, they will be carried off into their wicked place.
I can see that,
Mhm.
but I also can see that even like in our case, there's a promise that evil's taken away from us, in a different place, and it's taken to this land that's prepared for the evil people. So I take it as that's a good promise for me, because in this world that we live in, there's a lot of evil, and that makes it difficult to live in this environment. So if evil's taken away into another place, then we don't have that within our midst.
No, I've always said judgment is, I think the scriptures say this very clearly too. Judgment is not only scary, but the Bible even teaches if we are right with God, if we are following the way, we look forward to that, right? We look forward to the day of judgment with joy, because it's that removal of evil. There is no evil in heaven. That's one of the greatest things of heaven, is that there's only righteousness and there's only worship, and it's it's a beautiful place, free from all sin and all sadness and sorrow and death. And so you're right. If the wicked are going to their prepared place for only the wicked, for the righteous, that is an encouraging thing. But it's a warning to the righteous also, that if we follow in that same wickedness, we will be carried off to that wicked place as well. So, I think you're right. It could be very encouraging for somebody who's not wicked, and for somebody who is living in wickedness, it's a great warning. So, yeah. I agree with you, and I think that definitely still applies to the new covenant as well. Okay, any other thoughts or questions on that vision? Okay, so now we move on. The vision of the 4 chariots. This one's pretty involved. We got a lot of things going on here in this vision. But we'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and read it. They're starting in chapter 6. It says, "Then I turned and raised my eyes and looked, and behold, 4 chariots were coming from between 2 mountains, and the mountains were mountains of bronze. With the first chariot were red horses, with the second chariot black horses, with the third chariot white horses, and with the fourth chariot dappled horses, strong steeds. Then I answered and said to the angel who talked with me, "What are these, my Lord?" And the angel answered and said to me, "These are 4 spirits of heaven who go out from their station before the Lord of all the earth. The one with the black horses is going to the north country, the white are going after them, and the dappled are going toward the south country." Then the strong steeds went out, eager to go, that they might walk to and fro throughout the earth. And he said, "Go walk to and fro throughout the earth." So they walked to and fro throughout the earth. And he called to me and spoke to me, saying, "See, these who go toward the north country have given rest to my spirit in the north country." Okay. So Zechariah is receiving this last final vision of the night, right? With these eight visions. So he sees 4 chariots coming from between these 2 mountains. Okay. Now a lot of people have kind of tried to pinpoint which 2 mountains that he might have actually been seeing. Okay, especially when it says that the ones with the black horses went to the north country and they were going between 2 mountains. You know, how would that work? And some have said it was Mount Zion and then another mountain with it. But I don't think that that's the point really here to worry about as to which mountain he's really going through. The point, I think, there mainly, or Zion and Olives, those are the 2 mountains that people have speculated it being, Mount Zion and Mount Olives. But I don't think that's the point, especially because the point is made that they're mountains of bronze. Okay, and I think that is the more significant point as to which mountains they are. What would be very significant about mountains, other than just the rare look of a mountain made out of bronze? What would be significant out of that?
They wouldn't pass away easily.
No, they're very, very strong, very sturdy mountains. If a mountain was made of bronze, there'd be no moving it. You know, I mean, it's absolutely very firm in the foundation. And when we see what he's saying here, the mountains were of bronze, and these chariots were coming from between the 2 mountains, right? And it says later in the vision, when he says, "What are they?" it says they're 4 spirits of heaven who go out from their station before the Lord. So where are they coming through? They're coming from those 2 mountains, right? Through those 2 mountains. And here in verse 5 it says they're spirits of heaven who go out from their station before the Lord of all the earth. So I believe those 2 strong pillared bronze mountains are there to represent their station, right, in heaven. They're spirits of heaven sent out by God. I believe that's what they represent. So very important there to the vision that you have these big, strong mountains, and then the spirits that God are sending out are coming from those mountains, from their place in heaven. Any comments there?
Isn't bronze significant to kingdoms?
I don't know about that.
I thought that I heard that one time, that bronze, when bronze is mentioned, it's talking about is a representation of kingdoms. But I don't remember
It's
correctly.
probably an image in Daniel she's talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
That could be true. The bronze being of kingdoms, the kingdom of heaven, maybe foreshadowing that. I don't know.
Well, mountains themselves used as figures of kingdoms and rules, whether it's secular kingdoms and rules or whether it's God's rule. And it looks like in this case it'd be a reference to God's rule, like you're saying. These are chariots, horses are coming out of these mountains to do God's bidding, not necessarily the bidding of other nations and such, other kingdoms.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point with the bronze there. Okay. Anything else before we move on to the chariots and the horses? Okay, so he sees these chariots coming from between those 2 mountains of bronze. And the first chariot, now I don't believe these are like war chariots, okay, that you'd see in war. I think they're, your classic carrier carriages type things, carrier chariots. But in verse 2 it says the first chariot were red horses, then you have black horses, and then you have white horses, and then the fourth you have these dappled horses. Okay, and so obviously in reading these visions, commentators, scholars, preachers, they've always said, okay, well, we have to pinpoint what these four horses mean, right? Because it's a big part of this vision. And it's hard to do that, okay, because the explanation that's given by the angel of what are those, he says they're the four spirits of heaven who go out from their station, and he doesn't really necessarily tell us exactly what each horse represents or what they're doing, okay? So it's kind of speculative for us to put meaning to each of them, but there's a passage that if it relates, and I don't know if you can 100% for sure say it relates, but in Revelation 6, John receives a vision, okay, in Revelation chapter 6 of horses, okay, very, very similar to this. In Revelation 6, it says in verse 1, "Now I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard," the Lamb being Christ, of course. He says, "I heard one of the four living creatures saying with a loud voice like thunder, 'Come and see.' He said, I looked, and behold, a white horse, who sat on it and had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer." So in John's vision, at least, the white horse stood for what?
Conquering, victory.
Victory and conquer, right? Okay. So it could be that the white horse there, we'll talk about it a little later once we see with the black horse going to the north country, the white following it. It may have the same meaning, okay? Like I said, that's a little speculative. You can't necessarily say 100% that John's vision and Zechariah's vision have exactly the same meaning on the horses, okay? But if we keep reading it, it gets pretty in depth. I think it's possible to say that they would relate. It says in verse 3, "When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, 'Come and see.' Another horse, fiery red," so this is the red horse, "went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another, and there was given to him a great sword." So the red represented what? Battle and death, right? Killing, right? It was war. Okay, so the red horse there represented war.
Sheldon, which chapter are you in?
Oh, I'm in Revelation 6. Sorry.
No, it's not.
No, you're okay. We're in that was the first 4 verses there.
Okay.
And then the next 2 talk about the next colored horse. It says, "He looked, and behold, a black horse, who sat on a pair of scales in his hands, and he heard a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures saying, 'A quart of wheat for denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine.'" So this is talking about, he has scales in his hands, and he's rationing out. What does this represent?
Famine?
Famine, exactly. That took me a while, but yeah. My Bible heading there said scarcity on earth, but I didn't trust it, and I did it for myself, and it took me a while. But you're right, famine, scarcity. So what we see, when we look at the red horses, were the first ones. If it's the same, those red horses could represent like a war. The black horses could represent No, sorry, did I read the black horses yet?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was famine.
Famine, that's right, duh, I just read it. Okay, so the black horses could represent the famine. The third being white horses could represent the victory, the conquering, okay? Now, like I said, that is speculative. Don't say, oh, well, Revelation 6 told us what Zechariah's vision meant. I can't say that. But, if the Holy Spirit's using the same type of symbolism in a vision to John as he is to Zechariah, with the different colors and the same animals, same colors, same animals, it could very, very easily be related. So let's go ahead and follow that little trail for now, and we'll see how I think again it might relate. Okay, so it says the third chariots were white horses, and the fourth dappled horses, strong steeds. And then he answered and said to the angel who talked to me, "What are these?" And the angel answered and said to him, "These are 4 spirits of heaven who go out from their station before the Lord." So the 4 spirits, some talk about the 4 winds, okay? Little s spirits, obviously. The 4 winds, okay? So some people say, well, 4 winds, that's obviously talking about 4 earthly dominant nations. Not necessarily, okay? We talked about the 4 winds a little while ago in this class when we looked at, I think, the vision in the first vision. But this is talking about when they go from their station before the Lord of all the earth. What does the four spirits really represent?
It appears to be God's workings among all the nations of the earth. These visions, John's vision and these that Zechariah have, as we've talked about before, are kind of painting a picture of what's going on behind the scenes. God's in control, and God is going to bring judgment upon nations He pleases to bring judgment on, and He's going to be victorious in whatever He accomplishes in all those things, whether it's through famine or whether it's through war and bloodshed things are written in a way that maybe we can kind of get a picture of what's going on behind the scenes a bit there.
Yep, I agree completely. I think the winds that are in Zechariah's vision, when it says they go forth standing before the Lord of all the earth, they're His messengers. Basically, is what that meant. And we saw that before in other visions when they see them going out to and fro through all the earth. That was pretty common language when we looked at these visions. When He says when they're eager to go, He says go walk to and fro. So they walk to and fro. We've read that a lot in all these visions, okay? And I think that's the messengers of God.
Yeah, chapter 1 started out these horses, different colors, and verse 11, they responded, "We have walked to and fro throughout the earth. Behold, all the earth is resting quietly." There was peace throughout the land at the time because Babylon, Assyria had, in essence, been put down by the Persian government that was in power at that time.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And well, it's kind of interesting how, like Ron said, when we see the first vision of those horses going out and going to and fro, walking to and fro over all the earth, saying there's peace, we're going to get a different ending, right? He's going to go to the north country, which would be the Assyrian, I believe, Babylonian nations, would be the north country that this black horse is going out on. Now, in the first vision, when those horses went there, they said there's peace. There's no more fighting. There's no opposition to them. But now it's going to end differently. It says, He called to me and spoke, saying, these who go, or I'm sorry, up one. The one with the black horses is going to the north country. The white are going after them, and the dappled are going toward the south country. Now, the meaning of the dappled horses is a little bit more difficult, to kind of understand. There was a pale horse in John's vision, okay? And so it's like, okay, well, we don't have the same vision of a horse there for that fourth one in John's vision. So it's kind of difficult to understand what that would be doing going toward the south country, okay? But I think if you see the black horse as the famine, and you see the white horse as victory and conquering, if they're going toward the north country, to Assyria, Babylon, those types of empires, what would that mean if those were going toward them? The white after the black.
They're gonna-
Things are peace up there?
Not anymore, no. They were in the first vision. We know that they went up and said they were at peace. But now, if we see the black horses representing a famine, the white horse representing victory, and they're going up toward the north country to Babylon and Assyria, we can kind of see that being that God is sending a famine right on those people, and that the white horse following behind the black horse means He's going to be victorious in that famine, that He's going to accomplish His goal, His will there. And like I said, it's still a little speculation as to whether or not those horses really are that way. But it would make sense, okay, if the black horse and the white horse did represent famine and conquering. It would make sense, okay? So, like I said, it's kind of hard to put that on this 100% for sure, stamp it. That's what it means. But it's pretty significant, the similarities between John's horses and Zechariah's vision of horses.
What's the definition of dappled in this sentence?
Spotted, speckled, variety of colors. Okay, so it'd be like I don't know exactly which colors, but it'd be spotted or speckled, maybe gray speckled horses. You know, like we kind of, at least the horses I've seen that have been speckled that way. That's what I picture in my head. But I don't know if it could have been speckled with crazier colors. I've never seen a red horse, you know, an actual red horse. So I don't know if it's exactly a gray speckled horse, but that's what I see.
So I'm wondering, is there a significance, the North Country being Israel and the South Country being Judah? I wonder if there's some if there's something within that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the North Country that's being talked about here is Babylon and Assyria, the empires to the north of Israel.
Okay.
Not necessarily north of Judah, you know, where the two nations split, but north of Israel, being Assyria and Babylon. Because at this time, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the nation was split yet. Were they?
Yeah.
Into Judah and Israel?
Yes, they would have been split this time on
Okay,
things, yeah.
okay.
But verse 10, you're going to receive a gift, Joshua, is from Babylon.
Right.
And so I think you're on track at representing, the whole vision, a representation of enemies of God's people. And Assyria, Babylon, always enemies of God's people. The South, when we get to, I think, going to be talking about Egypt, in essence, that are always noted as enemies of God's people. And it appears, anyway. And the only revelation we have from the Holy Spirit as to the nature of these horses is the one you referred to it there in Revelation.
Yeah.
And it's a similar vision or scene, revelation, God sending forth these horses to do his bidding behind the scenes, to put down nations that are in Revelation against God's people, destroying the saints, Babylon representing Rome, I believe, on things. And here you have a similar situation. Enemies of God's people are going to be put down, constantly put down on it.
Yep, I agree with that for sure.
To me, the dappled horses, the only explanation you have is in this context. They're strong.
Yeah, they're strong.
They're strong.
A strong force.
Representing God's workings again behind the scenes of all these nations. He's going to have victory. May not look like it at present, just like the saints in the book of Revelation. It looked to them like Rome was going to win. But God said no. Saints are going to be victorious. God was working behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's a very good explanation of this, I think, for sure. Okay. So we have the black and the white following after them, going to the north countries, which I believe to be, like we said, Babylon, Assyria, the enemies of God, or the enemies of God's people. The dappled going toward the south country, strong steeds. It says the strong steeds went out, they walked to and fro throughout the earth. He called, in verse 8, to me and spoke to me, saying, see, those who go toward the north country have given rest to my spirit in the north country. And so if these people were against, if these nations of the north were against God's people and against what, God's law and and its teaching, then the spirit wouldn't have rest there. It would have been against God. It would have been against the people. The spirit wouldn't have been able to have rest. So it, again, makes me think that maybe there is a big connection between the horses in John's vision there in Revelation and these, because if it was famine and victory and God's victory in that famine going toward those countries, then we would have the spirit being at rest in those countries. But again, a little bit of speculation there, but that's the only passage in Scripture, the only inspired thing that I could find that might explain what those horses meant and what might be happening to the north country with those horses going up there. So, any other thoughts, comments on it? Okay. So we got about 5 minutes left, I think. Yep. Right on time. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get into a little bit of this. We probably won't be able to get into depth in a lot of it, but now the visions are over. Okay, so he's had 8 visions in one night, and now the word of the Lord comes to Joshua again. So he's now prophesying. Remember when we talked about before, kind of the telltale sign of when a prophet's giving credit to God for the words that he's receiving, saying that they're not his words, but they're God's words, he's prophesying. Okay? That's what's happening here again in verse 9. That's how we know the visions are over, is the word of the Lord came to him and he began to speak. So he said, saying, received the gift from the captives, from Hildiah, Tobijah, and Jedaiah, I don't know, who have come from Babylon, and go the same day and enter the house of Josiah the son of Zephaniah. It's a different Josiah than King Josiah. Okay, we know that Zephaniah was not young King Josiah's father. Okay, so it's a different Josiah. And he says, take the silver and gold, make an elaborate crown, and set it on the head of Joshua the son of Jehozadak the high priest. Then he then speak to him, saying, well, let's stop there actually in verse 11 for a second. So he receives the word of the Lord, right? And he says, you received the gift from the captives. That's what Ron was referring to, okay? Joshua, the high priest, is going to be receiving this gift from the northern nations, right? From the captives. He says, who have come from Babylon, and go the same day to enter the house of Josiah. He says, take the silver and gold, this is the gift from those captives that have come from Babylon, and make an elaborate crown. Set it on the head of Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest. So what is God telling Zechariah right here? To crown Joshua, right? And he's going to get those that silver and gold to make that elaborate crown from who?
Southern Kingdom?
The captives that are coming from the northern kingdom. Or northern, I say, Babylon, specifically. Okay, so that's what he's being told here. Pretty straightforward. I just want to make sure we have our head around it. So this is what Zechariah is receiving from the Lord, to crown Joshua the high priest. And he says, then speak to him, saying, thus says the Lord, behold the man whose name is the branch. From his place he shall branch out, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. Yes, he shall build the temple of the Lord. He shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule on his throne. So he shall be a priest on his throne, and the counsel of peace shall be between them both. Okay, just throw this out there. Who's that referring to? Jesus Christ. Yep, absolutely, 100%. I believe this is a messianic prophecy. Not just because the translators make you think so by capitalizing all of the words and using the capital letters. There weren't any capital letters in the original language of this. So this is translators. As a matter of fact, their language, writing out their language, they don't even use capital letters for anything. Not just that the Bible wasn't written that way, but they don't have such thing as lowercase and uppercase like we do. But I think the translators got it right here. That this is referring to Christ. It says, from his place he shall branch out, he shall build the temple of the Lord. And then later it says, he shall be a priest on his throne. What book in the New Testament helps us understand that this is a messianic prophecy? Hebrews. Yep. Hebrews, that he was going to, the relation to the temple, right? And to the kingdom of God, and to him being our high priest, right? In the New Covenant. Exactly. Hebrews. That's a good answer. And he says, the counsel of peace shall be with them both. Any comments or questions there?
Yeah, Jesus is going to be king and priest at the same time, and that kind of looks like that's kind of the significance of this crown going to Joshua, high priest, this time. And it's referring to messianic prophecy of the coming of Christ, who's going to rule and also be priest. Technically, high priest, as the Hebrew writer says.
That is a good point, because we don't see other high priests being crowned other than Joshua. You know, we don't see them. That's not custom for a high priest to wear a crown. So that's a good thing to pull out there, for sure.
I'm a bit confused just a little bit, so
okay.
help me just a minute.
No problem.
Okay, if it didn't have all the indentions and all the quotes and the capitalization, I don't know that I could see the transition from knowing that it's Joshua to Jesus. I mean,
Okay.
how would Zechariah, we may have to discuss this later, but I mean, how, it seems to flow as if to say that Joshua is going to, you know, the reason for the crown is he's going to do this. But then at the last part of that quotation says, the counsel of peace shall be between them both. That's when it makes you question, well, what's both?
Right.
You know,
Now, in verse 12, it helps us out, because once they have crowned, set it on the head of Joshua, okay, the high priest. What he's being told now is, when he says, then speak to him, saying, that is Zechariah speaking to Joshua.
Yeah.
So this right here is said to Joshua, behold, the man whose name is the branch. He's talking about somebody else other than Joshua, to Joshua. He's not talking to Joshua about himself, about Joshua. He's talking about a different person. Okay, because he doesn't say from your place, you shall branch out. He's saying it's a different person there, which makes it not going to be Joshua, because if he's speaking to Joshua, talking about this other person that is going to do all of this, then it's not about Joshua. And then, like you said, both them, Joshua and the king and high priest.
The main way to see is what you have reference of here. Look at New Testament references to see who fulfilled this. There's 5 or so specific statements in there, and there's only one person in the New Testament fulfills all those 5 statements, and that's Jesus Christ.
Right.
On things on it. So that's how you make transition. Old Testament times, they couldn't understand all of it. We know that. I mean, New Testament writers say that you couldn't understand those things in the Old Testament. The New Testament reveals what the Old Testament was talking about.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Hopefully does that help you out, or we can talk about it more next week if you need to. But
I mean, I get it, but I
Okay.
don't know that the person that he was speaking to would necessarily get it. So he has,
and he might not have, like Ron said, he may not have understood it at the time, because you couldn't have. We can see it because we see both. We see the beginning and the end of those prophecies, the speaking and the fulfillment.
The whole point in all of this happening is that the prophecies are being given to Zechariah so he could give them, warning, the people of Israel, warning of all these things, right? So if he didn't understand, all he could do is convey the words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's why I was trying to make sense of it.
Yeah.
He didn't really understand all of it.
Well,
so.
That's seen in the New Testament with even with Peter, when he preaches. The way that the Holy Spirit directed the words of like the prophets and the apostles isn't necessarily 100% known to us, but there's something there, and it's not that the Holy Spirit gave them all of the knowledge. We know that. It gave them the words to speak. They studied on their own. They did those things on their own, because Peter even taught against circumcision and against, or taught that the Gentiles were going to be brought in. And later on, we see that he doesn't even understand that fully, but he taught it. And so even in the New Testament, we see sometimes they're conveyors of the word, and they themselves don't even understand it fully yet.
Well, the main thing I think to think about too is, even though they couldn't understand all this, there's enough language in there to give them hope. Somebody is coming, whether it's tomorrow or whether it's in the future, who is going to build a temple and rule on his throne as priest. And that was the significance, I think, of all these Old Testament prophecies, hoping for a better day, hoping for a Messiah.
Yeah, and the Jews were looking forward to that Messiah. Even when Christ got there, they just didn't recognize him as that Messiah.
Yeah.
So they knew there was a Messiah to come.
Yeah.
And through the prophecies of Isaiah and stuff, you can't miss it. There's a Messiah to come. So yeah. That's a good question, though. Great discussion this
We're
week.
going